Hi, today we're going to make a pumpkin soup flavored with a smoky, somewhat spicy ancho powder, and we're going to make it out of one of these beautiful heirloom pumpkins. Now, I will walk you through the recipe, which is really easy and ready in 45 minutes. But if you stick around until the end, I will take you outside and show you the whole range of heirloom pumpkins, give you a little primer on what they taste like, and show you how to cure them if you grow your own. Curing is one of those steps that will make your pumpkins and your winter squash last for 6 months or longer. And the longer they last, the sweeter they get. It's true. So follow me. First we'll make the soup. Okay, the hardest part about working with squash is cutting through the rind, especially if you're dealing with some of the really difficult winter squash. Take a chef's knife like I did, point side down and get it started. And then use a cleaver or a really strong large knife and a hammer or a pounder, whatever you've got, to open it up. This is a candy roaster squash, which is long, so I cut it in half first and then quartered it, and that should be big enough pieces that it'll roast in about an hour to an hour and a half. So I'm using the cleaver again to cut it lengthwise, and as soon as we get it cut, we will take out the seeds. Now, there is a little bit of a debate between my husband and I, at least, about how to get the seeds out. I prefer taking them out now before cooking. It's a little bit harder to scrape them out, but it's not, the squash is not hot, and so you can really hold it and get a good grip on it. If you cook it first, you can take the seeds out later, but it's very hot and you have to handle it that way. Okay, so we're going to stick this in the oven, flush side down, 375 for about 1.5 hours, and voila, here we are. This, you'll know it's done if you stick a fork or a knife through the squash and it's tender all the way down to the rind. That's what you're looking for. So this one is nice and done. It can be a little burnt. Caramelized is what they call it. Okay, now we're going to add the spices and the onion to a skillet and saute it on the stove. So I have 1 chopped onion that I'm adding. I have a tablespoon of ancho powder, a tablespoon of fresh mint, a tablespoon of coriander, and 2 cinnamon sticks. And I'm going to put that on the stove top and saute it over medium heat for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes until the onions are caramelized, which is what they look like now, caramelized onions and spices. Dump those, you can still see the steam coming out. Dump those into a large pot, the largest pot that you have, and then start putting the squash flesh in, or the pumpkin flesh. And so that should come out fairly easily now. The squash is cooled, and I'm going to scoop it out with a spoon until it's all out. Put the peels aside. I don't know what to do with the peels. I put them in the compost pile. Okay, so I've got all the squash in. Add a chicken broth. If you're vegetarian, you can use vegetable broth or water. Water is fine too. I just like chicken broth. I think it's a little more robust. And we're going to put that on the stove for about 30 minutes. After it's done, take a stick blender and blend it all up together until it looks creamy like this. I also added a couple of tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. Now, let's head outside and look at those heirloom squash. Okay, the squash is done, and we are outside now looking at some of the heirloom squash that we've picked from the garden. Now, the time to pick the squash, if you grow your own, is right before a frost or right after a frost. They're going to be sweeter then. When you are picking them, look for stems that have turned brown instead of the bright green. And then what you do after you harvest them, if you want them to last a long time and get sweeter, is to cure them. To cure the squash, you just set them out outside here in the sun for a couple weeks. Now, if you don't have the luxury of sun for a couple weeks after your first frost, then just get them as dry as you can and get the rinds hardened off by putting them in a warm place, not a humid place. After they are cured for 7 to 14 days, then you want to store them, and you store them by putting them in a covered area, not outside, that is around 55 degrees. Now, if you get colder than 55 degrees, they're going to mold. If you get warmer than 55 degrees, they're going to rot too. So 55 degrees is a really good temperature. Check them every so often if you have any that are moldy. If you have one that's moldy, it's going to affect the whole bunch. Now, if you don't cure your own squash and you buy at the farmer's market, ask the farmer if they've cured them. A lot of farmers do not do this, and just know that if they've been cured, they will last longer, and the longer they last, the sweeter they get. Okay, so now I'll just tell you a few of these. Now, these are all heirloom, and so they come from different places, and I can't pronounce all of the names appropriately. So give me the benefit of the doubt on that. This big one, which we used for the soup, this is called Candy Roaster. I can pronounce that one. It's sweet, it's dense, and it's great for baking and for soups. Okay. This one, this is just your basic spaghetti squash. I grow a lot of these because I do a lot of low carb cooking, and this is one of the few winter squashes that's low carb. This one back here is pretty strange. I'll show you the little one. This one is warted. It's from France. It's called, let's see if I can say it, Galou Designs or Designs. But these warts are, it's a process of sugar breaking out of the skins, and that's what causes these warts. A lot of people use this just for ornamental. However, it is good in soups, and it's tasty. So this one is called Hopi. This is a Native American squash from the Hopi tribe. It is nutty, it's sweet, and it's very dense. Most of these are really dense. They're quite heavy. Okay. This one is a Jardale, and it's really popular in Australia, and it's really heavy. Dense, nutty, really good for savory. Okay. This, let me see if I've got one here. This is a butternut squash. However, it's an heirloom butternut squash from France, Sucrin du Berry, and love my pronunciations. And it's really sweet, really deep, dark flesh inside. It caramelizes really nicely. And then this one, and these come in all sizes, but this is called, this one's from Brazil. And it's called moringa, but it's really, really popular for a dish they do in Brazil, where they cut off the top and put shrimp in it and a filling inside. And I really don't think I can pronounce it, but it's a Portuguese word, and it means shrimps in a pumpkin. So I am going to make that later on, so stay tuned and you'll see it. Okay, what else have we got here? We've got these great big green ones. This is Chioggia from Italy, and then I'm going to move the camera for a minute so I can show you these big, huge Cinderella pumpkins. Okay, this is a French pumpkin also, and it is, I don't call it, people call it the Cinderella pumpkin because it's a lot easier to pronounce than the Rouge de Temps. But rouge de Toms means something, it's a red, dark red pumpkin. They're called Cinderella pumpkins because they look like her chariot. They're big, they've got these heavy ribs in them. And here's the other French one with all the warts on it. And then this, let's see, I don't know if I can reach it, but this one is the one that I made the soup out of. Here we go. This is my favorite pumpkin, or favorite winter squash. It's called Buen Gusto di Horno, and it means good taste from the oven. And it's just really, really sweet and really nutty, and the flavor is just out of this world. Hard to cut, but good to eat. Okay, that's most of them. I think I have a few more, but basically, cure your squash or buy cured squash. They should last 6 months. Heirloom squash tend to be very dense and sweet and somewhat nutty, and they're great to eat, pies, baking, but they're also really nice ornamentals. Like this one. This one is actually edible, but most people use it as an ornamental. Same with this. This one is used in France a lot for soups, but a lot of people here use it as an ornamental. So, good eating. Just get a cleaver so you can get them cut.